right, we'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast for business owners. And we're talking about, you know, becoming a business owner. Um, it could be starting a business or it could be owning a company, buying a company. And so this will be a series ongoing. And so I think we'll probably focus in on buying a company, is my guess is. And that's very, 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 very different than starting a company. And so, do any of you know what the biggest difference between buying a company and starting a company is?
You're not building a car with your own, adding horsepower as you build it. You're jumping into a car with a lot of horsepower.
And what's the upside and downside of that?
The downside would be you can wreck it running into a tree really quickly. Not sure quite what the upside is. You're already going fast or you're,
Well, the upside is you can tap into what somebody else has built. You can tap into what somebody else has built. And theoretically, you don't have to go through all the blood, sweat, and tears. You don't have to take the risk. Now, if you're buying a company, you're paying for all of that. And so, Tom Kuhn said, you make money in real estate not when you sell the property, but when you buy it. And so you buy a business, you buy a business and you pay too much for that business. And what will that do for you?
run you out of business.
Why?
Can't
Not
handle the
sure.
debt load.
Yeah, it's the debt load. So the debt load, the more the what you have to pay on the debt, it could be a three, four, five, $10,000 a month that the previous owner didn't have to pay. And so the debt load can bury you. I mean, just bury you. And what's probably the number one factor in buying an established business?
Probably the price.
No,
Cash flow.
more important than that.
Knowing your numbers.
It's actually more important than that. Those are all critical importance, but probably the number one thing in buying an established business is going to be the employees. Who's been doing the work that's generated the revenue? And you can have sleepers like icebergs underneath, and you don't even know what somebody's doing. And, so McDonald's, you pay, $500,000 to get the name. They don't even tell you they tell you how much salt to put on the thing. You go to McDonald's University and they train you in how to flip burgers, every position. They train you in how to do everything. And so if you don't go ahead, if you have key people in place and you don't keep those key people, it doesn't matter how much cash flow you have. It doesn't matter anything. Like you lose a key person and it can put you out of business. So let's go ahead and look at, there's something that's called a factor. And so it could be a one or two or three factor, or higher. And so it's often going to be of EBITDA, which is earnings before taxes and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a factor on that. So it's typically the last 3 years often. And it's going to be, in my finance degree. And so 3 business degrees, one in finance, one in management, one in marketing, help lay the educational foundation for the knowledge base of what an account, what a balance sheet, what a income statement is. But my finance degree, I learned about puts and options and risk and a whole bunch of other things that helped me to say, how do I go about assessing the risk? And, so we're in the Amish area. In my experience with the Amish, they often overpay for businesses. And the way they get away with that is they work really hard to make up for overpaying for them. And so, what's the downside of that? It burns your marriage and your family out. I mean, two of Jason's that Jason and I went and looked at two businesses to go ahead and buy for him to buy two businesses. And both of those guys, they were in their late 30s, I think, early 40s. And it's like they're burned out. How could you be burned out in your late 30s, early 40s? And both of them said the same thing. It's because we didn't build the business properly. And we said, well, what if we came in and one of their biggest issues was bookkeeping and other types of stuff like that, accounting? What if we came in and took over that? No, my wife won't let me. So not only did he get burned out, but his wife got burned out too. And his family got burned out. So having case studies, I think, help. In college, there were a lot of case studies. So we studied in college and said, here's what happened. Here's what happened. And we can do case studies here too. And so Luke's got a situation where he's looking at buying into something. So understanding balance sheets and income statements, I don't know that we'll get into those here. Maybe we will. Look on the internet and find out what those things are. You miss one key piece in buying a business, it can put you out of business. And the stress, and it almost never goes as good as you think it does. I've never ever met a business owner that said it went easier than what they thought it was, ever. It's always harder. And so the first is you look at business valuation. Now, Luke's got a situation where he's going to have to work from the bottom up, and the guy wants to retire in 10 years. What's the statistical probability that Luke's going to be in a position to go ahead and where he is in a position to buy and the guy is willing to sell to him in 10 years?
Probably slim to none.
Probably. I'm not saying the guy is going to take advantage of Luke. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't do it. I'm just saying he's probably not going to go ahead and, he's probably not going to go ahead and do that. So if he goes in, he's going to probably end up being frustrated. So, I went ahead and had 6% of preferred mortgage associates. So I went in to my first job out of college and I told the owner, I said, hey, I want to move into top level, executive level management by the time I'm 30, which would have been 7 years. So I'm going to give 7 years of my life to this company. And then when I want to get up to where I have ownership and I have cash flow, and then I can go and pursue my life vision. So I'm willing to give 7 years of my life, like Jacob. So I'm willing to go ahead and give 7 years of my life, and I'll build it up. So I'm 23 years old, 24, and I'll build it up, and I'll replace me. So you won't. He's like, well, that's really not what we're looking to do. I said, well, don't promote me. And he did again, and then he did again. And then I saw the golden handcuffs come out. And so I was on track at the age of 26 years old, on track to make $460,000 a year and had $1 million in equity. And I walked away from it all because I could see that he wasn't going to honor that. And so, there's a whole bunch of businesses out there. Like in the next 10 years, there's so many businesses that are for sale. It's insane because there's people in their 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s, and their kids don't want the business. Why don't kids want the business? I would think that a smart kid would look at probably his dad, and see how much he's worked, how hard he's worked, and he won't have to do that and taking over dad's business. Why don't children of business owners want to take over their dad's business? in large part.
I don't know. For me, it was a lot easier to work in my dad's business because I grew up in there. I already knew it, but I don't know why I don't really want to take it
So
on.
probably the number one reason, not the only reason, but the number one reason is they see how hard their dad had to work and they don't want to work as hard as their dad did. What they don't realize is they don't realize you won't have to. You won't even come close because you can build on his success. But kids don't see that, and so they don't want to work. So there's this illusion out there that I'm going to be able to do something else or whatever, and it's going to be fine, or they don't even end up owning companies. So there's a whole bunch of businesses that are graying out, and you can see it in the auctions. Like, it's absolutely heartbreaking to me to see all the auctions, because essentially you're just auctioning your business off for the parts. It's not business. You're just auctioning it off for the parts. All of those businesses potentially have far more value than the value of their equipment. But they didn't set it up. Like, all of those that were auctioned off, I think it's probably fair to say they didn't own a company, they owned a job. Jason, before you ended up buying Weaver and Associates, how many businesses did you look at before you end up buying Weaver and Associates?
Oh, that would have been a good number to keep track of. I would
I mean,
get between 6 and 12.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I was thinking that. And so, you jump on the first one, and maybe it's the one. I mean, theoretically, it can happen. Theoretically, it can happen. Um, but every time you learn something. So what I would like to do is I'd like to build a system where you're out there looking, and you have two sets of people. You have people that are looking at selling a business, and you have people that are equipped to buy a business. When you finance a business, you can finance the business through, your own money. You can finance it through investors. You can finance it potentially through the bank, or you can finance it potentially through the owner.
Yep.
And so, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Yep.
And so, like, my vision is to help 1,000 people by the time I turn 70 own their own company. And so, how am I going to do that? So you've got to have young men and young women who are trained to learn to think like business owners. Do you have to know everything about bookkeeping or accounting or taxes? No, but somebody does. Do you have to know everything about marketing and sales? No, but somebody does. Do you have to know about, the product and service and marketplace? No, but somebody does. And there are so many pitfalls in buying a business. And again, I mean, Alvin Miller, his grandfather went ahead and bought a farm, and the marketplace went south, and he lost the farm. And I believe he never bought another business, or he never bought, I don't know that he ever bought another piece of real estate in his life. And so if you have to go ahead and put your, house up on the marketplace, like, what do you have for collateral to go ahead and do it? You might not only lose your business, you might lose your house. And I don't know how to go ahead, and probably potentially the business I started was one of the hardest businesses you could ever start, because I didn't have a product, I didn't have a service. So I had to create something from nothing. If you're construction, you don't. There's construction. Or if you're accounting, you don't. You don't have to create a product from nothing. But the amount of stress and pressure that's on a business owner and his wife, so the marriage has got to be in alignment. You've got to have certain knowledge. You've got to be willing to work. There are so many things. And so I think, consistency, drive, and discipline. Like, I don't know, Luke, what your intention is, but if you're serious about this, committing 30 minutes, 30 minutes a week to doing this, If you can't, if you don't, if you're not willing to commit 30 minutes a week, you're not serious about doing this, in my opinion. Questions, Luke?
No, I don't think so.
So the first two businesses, first one I owned 6%. I learned a lot from that. That helped me immensely in going to the next one. In the next one, I owned 49% and then flipped over to 51%, then bought out 100% of the business. Um, and so, um, so I would recommend, especially young guys, I would recommend going in and with partners, and making sure you get the right ones and making sure you're in flow is what I would recommend. Anything else, Luke, you wanted to accomplish today?
So I was thinking about the partners the other day. What if you would partner with the original business owner?
You could. It's any way you want to structure it, you can. Any way
Just
you want to structure it, you can structure it any way you want to, any way you can sell it. So for sure you can do that.
it's just important that everybody's happy and taken care of, or taken care of.
Yeah, and human nature is that we overvalue what we bring to the table and undervalue what other people bring to the table. We see all that we've contributed and all the risk we've done and all the work we've done, but we haven't seen what other people do. It's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a younger guy and you're taking over for an older guy, being in flow with him for sure is really important. Ben, what would you like to accomplish or questions you have?
No questions. Just was asked if I wanted to join. So
Good to have you here. Jason, what questions would you have or thoughts or what you'd like to accomplish today?
all getting up to the call, I was thinking about some of the stuff, and I don't know. To me, it seems like from my vantage point, it's probably the hardest pieces that for me, is having partners or someone to be maybe the operating managing partner, or finding people for that role, and then having other partners that you trust and want to, like you said, in flow and stuff like that. But because it seems like, even for me, there's constant opportunities that come across that it's not. I don't know that it's lack of opportunities. It's more just lack of people.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Well,
For sure. It's,
but
yeah. And and that's the challenge. And so especially if you've worked in the factory, you make all this kind of money, if you've gotten addicted to that money where you have to have that money, like working in a job, I think every year you work in a job, the harder it is to go ahead and be a business owner because you're just spoiled. And so for sure, I think it's the hard part is finding the people that'll go ahead and be able to do the work to find the business and then putting together the team that it's like, okay, how is this whole thing going to work? It's like going on a bear hunt. You want to decide ideally before you shoot the bear, well, who's going to get what parts of the bear? Well, the landowner, because the bear is on the land, the person who tracked it, they get a piece of it. The person who shot it gets a piece of it. The person who skins it gets a piece of it. And all of those 4 or 5 people think that their role is the most important role. It's like, okay. And so there's different roles that you have. There's different roles that you have in what you're doing. And so setting up a system to find companies and then setting up a system to find people who could acquire them, to me, that's just fun to do. I mean, that's just fun to do. So, but getting people, people just, they don't understand. Like you have to be patient. You move when you shouldn't. And best case scenario is you lose probably 2 to 10 years of your life. Worst case scenario is you'll lose your business, your home, maybe your marriage, a whole bunch of things, and you'll never get another shot at it. So it's not something for the faint of heart. And so what's right for one business, for what the person who's going to come in and run one business, they might do great in that business, but not in another business. So I think building like a group where you go ahead and like everybody contributes to finding businesses, everybody contributes to building them, building people that can run the businesses. All right. Anybody else have anything else?
So is it okay to go into details in this from this certain situation?
What we can do is we can go ahead and pause it here, the recording. The question, great question that Luke asked is, what if I buy in at a small percentage and build up? By and large, is not always true in all times. So you need to have, another area you need help in is probably technology. Another area you need help is in legal. And so, if you don't, as a general rule, if you don't own 51%, you don't own squat. So whoever controls that, theoretically, they could vote themselves to take, you could have $200,000 profit, and whoever owns the majority of it theoretically could go ahead and take that all as salary or all as a bonus. So if you don't own a majority of it, you don't own squat. If you have 3 people that own a third, theoretically that gives you more protection, or 4 people that own 25%. And so, and most businesses, yeah, so everything again, Luke, can be negotiable for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only it's questioning what the owner's goals are. It's interviewing what the goals of the owners are. What's your goals? And so being able to ask that, that information, and then being able to craft the deal and say, well, what if we did it this way? And how about this way?
Got it.
Anything else, Luke, you have?
I don't think so.
Jason or Ben, anything else either of you have?
I don't think so.
You good, Ben?
Yeah.
All right.